Class 30. Okay. Do you remember what we talked about last time? Because we didn't have philosophy at all last week, so I had to come up to speed just a little bit.
We were talking about the imaging concept. We were talking about Dr. Burnett. Well, actually, Dr. Burnett was talking about this. We were talking about the three major theories of the human nature.
Oh, exactly. Three major theories. Do you remember what they were?
The overemphasis of the material to the neglect or the denial of the spiritual.
Okay.
Overemphasis of spiritual to neglect of material.
All right.
And then the balanced view of spiritual and material in one unified being, which is hylomorphism.
Right. And that happens to be the correct view.
Of course.
I'd welcome your view. Now, I definitely think you should appoint one.
I think the prime.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go on.
So, we had gotten that part. So, the first one is atomism, which says that man is only material and not spiritual. Not spiritual. Then there is Platonism and Cartesianism, named after Descartes. That basically says, in Hinduism too, that man is composed of two things, spiritual and body, but we are just kind of a ghost inside the machine. The machine, the body, is accidental to who and what we are. We just inhabit this thing. So as you said, it's an overemphasis on the spiritual to the neglect of the material. And the third, of course, is Aquinas, Aristotle, hylomorphism. And you get the idea. The man is one being, body and soul. Now, what we were going to do, and we didn't have time to do, is to briefly talk about the weaknesses of the two false systems. Atomism's weakness. And basically, if there exists any immaterial or spiritual entities whatsoever, even if you only find, as it were, one spiritual entity, one immaterial entity, then the theory of atomism is false. Because if you say there is only material, nothing immaterial or spiritual, that's your theory. All you have to do is find one instance. This is true in most theories. All you have to do is find one real exception, exception to the rule, as it were.
And it brings down the domino.
Brings down the whole thing. And, of course, one of the ways we know of a spiritual being is Aristotle's first mover unmoved. Aristotle's first move unmoved is not a material being, it is a spiritual being. But if you want to get a little more, earthy, basically, we talked about this before, anything above the atomic level, if anything above the atomic level exists, then atomism is false. So, do you exist?
Nah.
I remember seeing. I think I told you about this before. A YouTube video where they talked about. There was somebody on there talking about the fact that Richard Dawkins doesn't exist, and it was somebody who talked exactly like Richard Dawkins, saying, and of course this would preclude any belief in the existence of Richard Dawkins. It was very funny, but if you believe that anything has a united being, if you believe in cats, if you recognize there is such a thing as a cat, then you can't be a materialist, because A cat is the substantial form of the cat of the animal. It is immaterial, spiritual. Spiritual nature of judgments and reasoning, such as freedom of the will. Where do you see the will in material forms? Now, there were 19th century people, scientists, who might have been good at certain things they did, but in their theorizing, they weren't good. They basically said, they were materialist, and they basically said that if you knew where every atom is right now on the face of the earth, and if you knew the direction it's going right now, you could predict the future until the end of time. Because everything is absolutely materially determined. Which is it. What's interesting about that, of course, is the people who have these theories, what they don't realize is just them saying this and coming up with this immaterial concept of what the atoms can do is an immaterial act. They might be talking, but the concepts are all immaterial. So that even when they give that theory of being atomists, they have to give it in an immaterial manner, because the concepts are immaterial. The other thing that shows that works against the theory of, well, I already said it, the theory of atomism is the will. Have you ever met someone, well, here's what Dr. Burnett says. Have you ever in your life come upon someone who perhaps should be blamed for doing something wrong? You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Have you ever met anyone who should be blamed?
No.
You haven't? Do you remember my little run-in with Faith Dixon? We had our beautiful little Mazda for years, in perfect condition. And I was coming out of a Kmart parking lot, and in front of me was a woman in a pickup truck, and that pickup truck was sat high. And our little Mazda sat low. So then, she jutted herself too much out onto Hurdle Avenue. I was behind her. She realized that she was too far out in the road, so she decided to back up. Crunch! Our Mazda, our cute little Mazda, that had been in perfect condition all those years, got a punch in the face. And unlike the human being, the punch stays. We get punched in the face. Our face, unless it's really hard, unless we're battered with a pipe or something, our form pops back. Okay, this crunched it in. Now, did she do something that she's responsible for?
Yes.
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 She did something she's responsible for. If somebody sets fire to a box thinking it's going to go to the moon, and the whole garage goes up in flames, did that person do something wrong?
Yes.
Yes, of course. Yes.
The question seems too
Anytime
obvious.
you have the operation of the will, anytime you say somebody should be blamed for something, somebody we know who papered a tree, right? They took toilet paper and they papered the tree in the rain. All right. What did that young girl have to do? She had to apologize and clean it up. Okay.
Are you talking about somebody?
Yes.
I don't know who it is. Tell me later.
And so anytime you have where someone should be blamed, and what happens too on the news? Oh, you're going to put that man in jail. Something terrible happens, and they want to put him in. And if it's really bad, all of a sudden they start talking about the death penalty again. I forget who it was. There was just something that happened. They were talking about. I think there was a shooting in a synagogue or something like that, and right away they were talking about all these people who never talk about the death penalty. Dr. Burnett says that nobody wants the death penalty. They think it's a terrible thing until somebody does something really bad. Or what we're going to give them? Well, we'll give them life imprisonment. Is that all? Doesn't seem enough. So once you recognize that people can be blamed for things, also have you ever done anything where you thank somebody for doing something for you because they didn't have to do it?
Yes.
Right? Okay? You're acknowledging freedom of the will. Where do you see freedom of the will in the rocks? Where do you see freedom of the will in cautious clay? Where do you see freedom of the will in material things? You don't. You don't see the will. You're acknowledging something immaterial. Okay. So, that's just a very quick thing to show that atomism does not hold together, but atomism is the primary view right now because even many atomists are not logical in their acceptance of atomism. They don't take it to its logical conclusion. And some of these, scientists on television, if they told you everything they were assuming when they're explaining some of their theories about this or that or the other operation of nature, then you would reject it altogether because you would see that it doesn't hold together. So atomism doesn't work. And of course, Cartesianism, Hinduism, it's very simple that we know that's not true simply by the fact that we know that we are one being. If I kick you in the shin, you don't say you kicked my shin, you say you kicked me. If you are driving the car and you exceed the speed limit and the officer pulls you over and you say, oh, it wasn't me, it was my foot. And so, you hear, slap my foot. Well, you'll get a ticket for insolence as well, probably. But, so we are one being. We are one being. It includes our body. So, the two extreme positions, okay? Oh, what I want to say to is, again, we are not, the soul is not like the hand in the glove, and then the hand comes out and you can put on another glove. That's basically what reincarnation would teach. We are one holomorphic being. If the true nature of man is a spiritual soul only, and that soul is merely accidentally united to an organic body, then that body is not really part of the human being, except as something owned or run by the soul of man. It's the old saying, the ghost in the machine. And this violates the most immediate experience of man, namely that he is a bodily being, and Dr. Burnett says an error not even made by materialists. Materialists recognize that we are bodily beings, they just take it too far. So there's two extreme positions. We're just a body and not a soul, says the atomists, and the Platonists, the Platonists and the Descartes, the Cartesians basically say we are really a soul that just inhabits a body. And of course the Thomistic is that it stands on the middle ground. We are body and soul. You exist, you're not just a pile of atoms. And you cannot deny, against the Cartesians, you cannot deny that you are a unified bodily being. Your experience tells you that. I am a being, I am a bodily being, I do exist, I'm not just a pile of atoms, there is a me. Okay, with atomism there is no me. Okay, so those are the three major viewpoints of human nature. Anytime you come upon anything, it's going to be a variation of one of those viewpoints. Now, from here, we move in to next heading. We move into the immateriality and the spirituality of the human soul. And this is done, we're going to look at this, well, let me explain it by giving the example, and that is that I was talking to a Catholic girl at college level. She was probably a sophomore or junior by now. And I said, the existence of the immortal soul is not a religious principle. It's a principle of philosophy. And this girl looked at me stunned. She had never heard that before. I said, you can come to the understanding and the recognition of the immortality and the immateriality of the human soul by use of reason alone, not necessarily simply by revelation. College level, she had never heard that before. This is what we're going to talk about. Otherwise, we end up... Have we ever talked about fideism?
I think we did. Yes.
Fideism is really a heresy. It basically says the only thing that we can know about things pertaining to God and things pertaining to morality comes from divine revelation. It's kind of like what we see here. It's that, you know, the atomists deny the spiritual and only look at the material. The Cartesians discount this material and only look at the spiritual. It's kind of a
extension.
It's kind of another way of that imbalance. You'll find too, many evangelical Protestants are basically fideists. There is only one way we know truth, and that is from the Bible. You get someone like William Barclay, who was a classically trained Presbyterian, who knew Hebrew, who knew Greek, who knew Latin, and who would have had philosophy. He would know about natural law. In fact, I forget there was some well-known Protestant theologian who talked about natural law. So he wouldn't be a fideist. He would recognize that we do come to certitude based on the nature of things and not simply divine revelation. Fideism just says divine revelation is all that matters, okay? And fideism does not help today, because especially today, to those who are of an open mind, you have to be able to give the reason for those things we know to be true. To at least people who are willing to hear it. And even then, I think I've quoted to you before St. Augustine, who said, and there are people, there is an intellect who may be capable of forming an objection to a given point, but incapable of understanding the argument that answers the objection. Oh yeah, what about this? And you start to answer, and you lose them completely. You lose them within the first 3 sentences. They're gone.
I think that's most of the college students at Damon right now.
Yeah, they're as I always say, they're great at saying, "I find that offensive."
Really? Well, they've had a lot of practice.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I don't know what goes on in the public schools, but based on what college people who teach freshman college says, it's pretty abysmal. Joe Sobrand said that in the 19th century to the 20th century, in the 19th century in high school we taught Greek and Latin, and we've gone into the 20th century where Greek and Latin in high school, and we've gone into the 20th century where we have to teach remedial reading in college. Right. So, anyway, we're talking about the spirituality and the immortality of the human soul, and this is based on reason. We're going to see a number of this comes from our dear friend Plato and Aristotle's friends, I should say, and also perfected by St. Thomas. Now, the demonstration of the spirituality and immortality of the human soul. Plato had a book called Phaedo. Phaedo, of course, was named after his dog. Because in Greek, Phaedo means Fido. No, really. But Phaedo is, and in that book, because he was imperfect in his ultimate explanations, but he was dead on target when he points out that man has an immaterial soul because he knows immaterial entities. These are things you've heard us talk about before. He knows what virtue is. He knows what justice is, what goodness is, courage, patriotism, honor, loyalty. You know, a dog might be said to be loyal, but he has no concept of loyalty. A cat is said to be haughty, but the cat has no concept of haughtiness. These are all immaterial terms. And because, Plato would argue, remember he was trying to get us back to that immaterial world, that really real world from which we dropped from. Virtue, goodness, truthfulness, manliness. These are all immaterial entities, and we know that. So that means we have a spiritual element in us, a spiritual soul, an immaterial soul that can operate in an immaterial manner, also in an intellectual manner. Now, Aristotle, we'll probably talk about this in the next class at this point. Aristotle's comes from our immaterial understanding of material entities. Basically, when I understand a rock, that rock is in my head. But I have the form of the rock. I have the same form of the rock in my head, but I don't have it materially. If intellect operated in a material manner, I would have to have that clunk of matter in my head. And once I had that clunk of matter in my head, it would block other things coming in because it would take up all the room. In a similar manner, we'll talk about this more in the next class after I come back from Honorable Japan. But you know, in the morning, I know I've done this, you brush your teeth, and then you come down, and without thinking, you have a glass of orange juice. How does it taste?
Dad, if that's not one of the most revolting... I had to do that in Truth or Dare. That was the first time I found it.
It's disgusting.
It's so revolting.
It's disgusting. Why? Because the material operation of your tongue, of your sense of taste, is inhibited by the Colgate or the Pepsodent or whatever you're using that kind of coats the tongue and prevents it from operating properly because it's blocking the operation.
That's so disgusting.
Okay. Same thing when we wear amber-colored glasses, right? When we do that, everything is amber, and not only that, there are certain colors that we can't see.
Like amber.
Like amber. We can't see it. So it inhibits, the material thing inhibits us receiving all forms of color. The toothpaste inhibits us from receiving all the tastes, in this case the orange juice. So if the intellect was material, it was a material operation, it had this block of matter that had to change into a cat and to whatever, it would block the operation of receiving all forms. We'll talk about that more in detail. Edward Fesser deals with it well, Dr. Waters deals with it well, Dr. Bennett deals with it well. I'll try to pull together the best of what they say for the next class on this. But that's the basic principle. Okay. Remember what I quoted Dr. Waters before. What can be all does be none. Remember him saying that? What can be all does be none. So if you can receive all forms, as it were, then that which is doing the reception must possess none of those forms. Otherwise, if it had that form, it would block it in a material way. It receives the form in an immaterial, intellectual manner. Another way, too, is the fact we talked about image and concepts. The fact that I can understand the concept of a tree. Now, my concept of the tree cannot be limited to one maple, or one cherry wood, or one dogwood. I could not have concept of treeness. The concept is of the entire comprehension of treeness itself. The material is one tree. And that's what animals have. They see one tree, one dog, one rabbit to chase. Okay. But when we understand treeness, our conception of tree has to hold and take into account all treeness that there is. This is strictly an immaterial spiritual act. It's not a material act. As I said, animals don't have this concept. They only have the image. We have the concept. And the fact that we have these concepts shows that this is an immaterial operation. Okay. So, next to the intellect, what do we have the power to do? We have the power of self-reflection. We can kind of look at ourselves in a mirror. We can be pleased with ourselves. We can be angry with ourselves. We can be embarrassed with ourselves. I just wanted to crawl under a rock.
Crawl into a rock?
Crawl.
Did you come up with that, or is it?
What?
I've never heard that. I want to crawl into a rock.
Crawl under a rock.
Oh.
Did I say into a rock? I meant to say crawl under a rock, okay? What's happening here, it's reflective, is one part of ourselves is turning back onto ourselves. So we're both the agent, as it were. We're both the subject and the object. That requires an immaterial operation, that we can reflect on ourselves. It's something a plant doesn't do because it doesn't even have imagination. But a dog or a cat doesn't sit there and say, "Oh boy, yeah, last time I was a little too greedy at my dog biscuits. So I really felt I must have looked stupid. I'm not going to do that again." Dog doesn't do that. Remember, a dog doesn't say anything because he doesn't have anything to say. Okay, he doesn't have this intellectual capacity to reflect upon himself. This is strictly an immaterial spiritual act. And self-reflection is strictly immaterial or spiritual act. So then, the consequences that come to that, strictly immaterial acts must flow from the spiritual faculty of an intellect, which in turn is the property of a spiritual soul. Okay, you might want to write that down.
Can you write it down?
Okay.
I mean, you read it for me.
Yes. Strictly immaterial acts, as what we talked about, that is understanding immaterial entities, our immaterial way of knowing.
Wait, can you repeat this?
Okay. Spiritual immaterial acts, as what we talked about, open parentheses.
As what we talked about?
Yeah, as the examples given. That is, first of all, our knowledge of immaterial entities such as justice, comma. Our way of knowing material entities, like a rock, comma.
Okay.
Our ability to understand concepts, comma.
To understand concepts.
Comma. And our power of self-reflection, close parentheses.
And power of...
Close parenthesis. Must flow from a spiritual faculty of intellect.
Must flow from a spiritual faculty
of intellect, which in turn is the property of a spiritual soul. Yeah, this is a 3-point conclusion. That's the first point, which leads to the second, which is what is spiritual cannot corrupt with death of the body. Cannot corrupt with the death of the body. Dash. Hence, it is immortal. Because you remember, material things break down. Spiritual things that are not made of matter do not corrupt. Well, we'll talk about that next time. There's one little thing to add to that too. But anyway, so hence is immortal. And the final point, hence, by its knowledge of universal concepts, and by self-reflection, the human soul reveals itself to be spiritual and immortal.
To be
spiritual and immortal. Now, what verse of the Bible did I quote to show this? None. What church council or church doctrine did I quote?
None.
Okay, this is just to reinforce the fact that the great thinkers, the Greek pagans, such as Plato and Aristotle, were coming to the conclusion that the human soul is immortal because it has these immaterial spiritual powers, and thus because it had these immaterial spiritual powers, it would live on after the death of the body. because itself being spiritual, it would not corrupt, and it would not die. So there it is. So when someone says to you, it's just a pointless religious belief.
I say, aha, that's what you think.
Yeah, well, you just say that there were scientific thinkers, because that's what they were. Aristotle and Plato were scientific thinkers, because what is the definition of science?
Certain knowledge through causes.
Certain knowledge through causes. They were looking for the causes. They were looking for explanations. They were trying to understand why man can talk about philosophy and dogs can't. There is a reason why. And they did all the work for us. And especially Plato, Augustine pretty much Christianized his philosophy, but it still had some problems, some questions unanswered. And it took a Thomas Aquinas, who was a gift to the church, who finally defended the use of Aristotle at a time when people were suspect of Aristotle, and showed Aristotle to be the system to best explain reality, best explain the causes of things, and then he brought it all together into a newer and higher synthesis, which Garrigou-Lagrange rightly shows that the Thomistic system is superior to other systems of philosophy and irreplaceable. And so that's it for today. Sound production copyright Oltene Library Services, all rights reserved. www.oltene.org. That's www.oltyn.org.